Welcome to the Bookworm Duo, where we explore a variety of books. Let's get started. Today, we are cracking open a title that, honestly, it reads like a political thriller. But the author insists it's just a chronicle of, how we got here. We're doing a deep dive into the big lie, election chaos, political opportunism, and the state of American politics after 2020 by Jonathan Lemire.
It's a heavy title for sure, but the book itself moves so fast, and I think the first thing we have to establish is the scope. Because when you hear the big lie, your mind immediately goes to November 2020.
Right. The lawsuits, the rallies, January 6th.
Exactly. But Lemire's whole point, his central argument, is that if you only look at the end of the story, you're missing. Well, you're missing everything.
Yeah, I thought it was just going to be a recap of that whole transition period. But it's really framed more as a biography of a strategy. It's almost this psychological profile of a refusal to lose and how that went from like a personality quirk to an actual doctrine of governing.
That's a great way to put it. Lemire argues 2020 wasn't some kind of fluke. It was the inevitable endpoint of a pattern that was running for decades. And to get it, he takes us back. Way further back. He actually pinpoints the birthplace of this whole strategy to a very specific date, August 1st, 2016.
Okay, August 2016. So let's set the scene. He takes us to the Greater Columbus Convention Center in Ohio, just a standard campaign rally. Why is this day one for Lemire?
Well, the context is everything. At that moment, Trump is trailing Hillary Clinton pretty badly in the polls. The whole narrative in the media is that he's probably going to lose. And Lemire's reporting suggests that for Trump, the idea of losing, of being seen as a loser, was just not an option. Psychologically intolerable.
So he goes up to the microphone in Columbus and says something that you just hadn't really heard in modern politics. He says, quote, "I'm afraid the election is going to be rigged. I have to be honest."
And that's the moment. Lemire says that's the first time a major candidate basically suggested the entire democratic system was a fraud. Just to set up an excuse in case he lost. It was a hedge.
Heads I win, tails you cheated.
Pretty much. If he won, great. If he lost, it wasn't his fault. The system was corrupt.
But the book does this really fascinating thing where it rewinds even further to show this wasn't just some political tactic he came up with on the spot. It was like a whole lifestyle. Lemire digs into his life in New York real estate, and honestly, the John Miller stories are just wild.
They are, but they're in the book for a very specific reason.
For anyone who doesn't know this deep cut, Lemire brings up how Trump would call New York tabloids and pretend to be his own publicist. He'd put on this voice, sometimes not even a very good one, and be like, "Hi, this is John Miller," or "John Barron."
And then he'd just brag about which famous women wanted to date him. He was calling reporters to say Madonna and Kim Basinger were pursuing him. It sounds hilarious, and it is, but Lemire connects it right to the presidency.
Right.
It taught him that if you just repeat a lie with enough confidence and you never, ever back down, you can bend reality. The media has to cover what you say.
He learned that just being completely shameless is a superpower if you refuse to be embarrassed by it. And Lemire draws a straight line from that, from John Miller to the birther lie about President Obama.
Yeah, that was the strategy's political debut. The claim was totally false, easily disproven, but because he wouldn't back down, he forced the entire political world to engage with him on his terms. It's how he got his foothold in the GOP.
Okay, so let's fast forward. He wins in 2016. You'd think, okay, the rigged talk is over because the system worked for him. But Lemire argues the presidency itself just became a series of practice runs for using the government to support his version of reality.
It literally started on day one, Inauguration Day 2017, the fight over the crowd size.
Oh man, that Sean Spicer press conference.
We all remember how it looked, but Lemire points out the institutional damage. He forced Sean Spicer to go to the White House podium, a symbol of, truth and lie, to claim it was the largest audience ever for an inauguration period. The book says that set the precedent. The whole federal government could be used to prop up the president's ego.
And it went beyond just press conferences. The book has this story about the golfer, Bernhard Langer, that I'd totally forgotten.
Yeah.
And it shows how these things just spiral.
It's the perfect example of the mechanism. The book says Trump told this story to lawmakers about how his friend, Bernhard Langer, was in line to vote in Florida and was turned away. Meanwhile, people who didn't look like they should vote were being allowed in.
The implication being pretty clear. But there was one tiny problem with the story.
Massive one. Bernhard Langer is a German citizen. He lives in the U.S., but he can't vote. He was never going to be able to vote. The story was physically impossible.
But it didn't even matter that it was false.
Nope. And here's the consequence. That completely fabricated story was used to help justify creating a taxpayer-funded voter fraud commission. They spent Months and our money looking for this fraud. And of course, they found nothing and disbanded. But the pattern was set. A personal lie becomes a federal investigation.
Speaking of dragging federal agencies into things,
Mm.
we have to talk about Sharpiegate.
We have to. Lemire frames this as a really crucial moment.
This was Hurricane Dorian. Trump tweets that Alabama is in the hurricane's path. The National Weather Service, the actual scientists, they immediately say, no, it's not. Alabama is safe.
And, a normal person, a normal politician would just say, oops, my mistake. But the book notes that for Trump, admitting any mistake is the ultimate weakness.
So instead, we get that scene in the Oval Office. He's holding up a weather map that has very clearly been altered with a black Sharpie to draw the hurricane cone into Alabama. It looked like a kid did it.
It was so absurd. Everyone on the internet was laughing. But Lemire's point is that we shouldn't have been laughing, because behind the scenes, the White House was pressuring NOAA, the agency that oversees the Weather Service, to put out a statement supporting the president and attacking their own forecasters.
So they were trying to corrupt a scientific agency, one that deals with public safety, just to protect his ego.
Exactly. Lemire says that was the dry run for 2020.
Which brings us to the main event, the 2020 election. The book sets the scene with COVID arriving, and again you see the split screen. Publicly, he's saying it'll just disappear. But privately, he's telling Bob Woodward he knows it's deadly stuff.
And that denial of reality with the virus led directly to the election fight. Because Democrats pushed for mail-in voting for safety, Trump immediately started calling mail-in ballots corrupt and fraudulent.
Which created what the book calls the red mirage. This is such an important concept for understanding what happened on election night.
It is. And it's something that political experts and both campaigns knew was coming. In key states like Pennsylvania, the Republican-controlled state legislatures made a rule that election workers could not start processing mail-in ballots until Election Day itself.
So they couldn't even open the envelopes early.
Yes. Not until the polls closed. And since in-person votes that day were heavily Republican and mail-in ballots were heavily Democrat, it was a mathematical certainty that the first votes counted would show Trump with a huge lead, a red mirage that would slowly disappear as they counted the mail-in ballots over the next few days.
And his own team knew this was coming, right?
Oh, yeah. The book confirms they briefed him on it. They called it the red mirage. But Trump decided to use that timing as a weapon.
So election night, it's 2:3 in the morning. Millions of perfectly legal ballots are sitting there waiting to be counted. And he walks out and just declares victory.
Frankly, we did win this election, he said. It was the exact thing his advisors were afraid of. He basically framed the normal, boring process of counting votes as a crime happening in real time.
And that's when the legal challenges started. Or as Lemire calls it, the clown show phase. I mean, 4 seasons total landscaping. We have to go there.
It might be the most surreal moment in American political history.
The campaign announces a big press conference at the 4 Seasons in Philadelphia. Everyone in the media thinks, okay, the fancy hotel.
And then the correction comes out. No, not the hotel. It's a small landscaping business in an industrial park.
Located right between a crematorium and an adult bookstore named Fantasy Island. You could not make this up.
So you have Rudy Giuliani, the president's lawyer, standing in a parking lot yelling about fraud at the exact moment the networks are calling the election for Joe Biden.
And then there was that other press conference where he's sweating so much it looks like his hair dye is running down his face in these dark streaks. It all just seemed like a total farce.
And that was the danger of it. Lemire writes that because it looked so ridiculous, the landscaping company, the hair dye, the lawsuits full of spelling errors, a lot of us dismissed it. We thought, this is too incompetent to be dangerous.
But the clown show was a distraction.
It was. While we were laughing, the anger among his supporters who believed this stuff was just boiling over.
That anger, of course, culminates in January 6th. And here, the book's tone shifts completely. It goes from the absurd to the terrifying. The pressure campaign is no longer about press conferences. It's direct coercion.
Right. It's the phone call to Georgia to find votes. It's the pressure on the Department of Justice to just, say the election was corrupt. But the final target, the last man standing, was Vice President Mike Pence.
Yeah, the book really digs into that relationship. For 4 years, Pence had been the most loyal soldier. But the entire plan on January 6th depended on him doing something illegal, unilaterally rejecting the certified votes.
And Trump knew just how to pressure him. He apparently told him, I made you, you were nothing. He basically threatened him, told him he was being too honest. It was just this campaign of psychological pressure to get him to break.
And then January 6th itself happens. The Capitol is breached. The detail from the book that I just can't shake is this image of Trump just watching.
Yeah.
Lemire reports he was in the dining room off the Oval Office, watching the riot on TV.
While everyone, his daughter Ivanka, his chief of staff, is begging him to tell people to go home, and he just ignores them. And then he sends a tweet.
To attacking Pence.
While the riot is happening, at 2:24 p.m., as the Secret Service is rushing Pence to safety, Trump tweets that Pence didn't have the courage to do what was necessary. And Lemire says that was like throwing a match on gasoline. The mob saw that tweet, and that's when the chants of "Hang Mike Pence" got really loud.
The book also brings up the tragedy of Ashley Babbitt, the rioter who was killed by police.
Yeah, and Lemire frames her death as the ultimate tragic cost of all the rhetoric. She wasn't just some random person. She was a true believer. She was there because the President of the United States told her the country was being stolen. Her death, he argues, is a direct result of that lie.
After all that shock, there was this very short period, maybe a day or two, where it seemed like the fever had broken. You had Lindsey Graham on the Senate floor saying, "Count me out." Mitch McConnell was condemning it.
It felt like a real turning point. But Lemire shows how unbelievably fast the party just snapped right back into line. The political pull of Trump's base was just too strong.
And the symbol of that whole reversal was a single photograph.
The picture of Kevin McCarthy down at Mar-a-Lago with Donald Trump. Just a few weeks after the riot, after McCarthy himself said Trump was responsible, he flew down to Florida to essentially kiss the ring. That photo sent a message to every other Republican. Trump is still in charge, and the big lie is still the platform.
And this is where the book makes it clear this isn't history. It's happening now. The big lie didn't just end.
Right.
It mutated. It went from tweets into actual laws.
Exactly. This aftermath section is so important. All that rhetoric about a stolen election became the reason, the justification for all these new voting restrictions in states like Texas, Georgia, and Arizona, making it harder to vote, limiting drop boxes, all of it based on the premise of the 2020 fraud that never happened.
So the lie became policy, but it also became a weapon used against regular people. The book focuses on the story of Ruby Freeman and Shay Moss in Georgia.
It's one of the most heartbreaking parts of the whole book. These were just two election workers, a mother and her daughter, doing their jobs, and Trump and Giuliani singled them out by name. They claimed a video showed them passing USB drives like they were vials of cocaine or something.
And what was it they were actually passing?
It was a ginger mint, a mint. But because of that lie, their lives were completely destroyed. They got racist death threats, people showed up at their houses, they had to go into hiding. Their story shows how this lie wasn't just abstract, it ruined real people's lives.
Lemire also zooms out and looks at the international impact. This wasn't just an American story.
No, he points out that dictators were watching. Vladimir Putin started using big lie rhetoric to justify his own actions, like the invasion of Ukraine. He would claim that Western democracies are rigged and illegitimate. The argument is that when the world's leading democracy can't even agree on an election result, it weakens the case for democracy everywhere.
So when you put it all together, what are we left with? The title is The Big Lie, but it feels like it's really about the fragility of truth itself.
That's it. The final takeaway from Lemire is that the big lie has now become a litmus test. To be a powerful Republican today, you basically have to endorse a version of reality that isn't true. And that reshaped the entire political landscape for 2022, 2024, and probably for a long time to come.
It really leaves you with a tough question. If a huge part of the country is operating from a set of facts that are just not factual, if you can't even agree on who won an election, how do you ever have a normal debate about anything else?
You can't. You're not arguing about policy anymore. You're arguing about reality. And that's the thought Lemire leaves us with. A democracy needs a shared set of facts to function. When that breaks, the whole system gets incredibly fragile.
That's definitely something to think about. Thanks for joining us. Subscribe for more bookish adventures and hit that like button if you enjoy the ride. Don't forget to share the knowledge, spread the word.